everybody, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I am so glad you're with me again. So we have been reading out of the book, The Ghost Dog of Stony Ridge. And DJ and Alfred, they have some plans that might be a little dangerous. They want to check out a couple mysteries. The first one is, why are those fish dying in the lake? And the second one is, where is this ball-mouthed hound, the ghost dog, and can they get it? And then can Alfred have it? That would be just wonderful. So, we're on chapter 4 already. The stray that stayed. Dad dropped DJ off at the small parking lot in front of the little store near Alfred's house. DJ walked up the hill, remembering how shy Alfred had been when they had first met. But Alfred had changed the minute he took DJ's bear cub Coco on a leash. Alfred had immediately walked into the store with the cub to show Mrs. Greenlee, the owner. Over the next few months, as Alfred helped DJ with the cub, Alfred had slowly changed from a bashful kid with thick glasses to a young boy whose unusual glasses didn't bother him anymore. When DJ finally had to give the cub away, it was hard to believe Alfred had ever been shy. Alfred looked up from where he was sitting at the bottom step of the high outside chairs that led up to his front porch. "Hey, DJ, well, I was hoping you'd show up. What did Mr. Kirsten say about the crazy things that happened to us last week?" DJ snapped his fingers. "I forgot. When I got to the newspaper office, he hadn't come in yet. I left my stories and went to have some breakfast. Then I got so upset I completely forgot to go back and ask Mr. Kirsten what he thought about the barbed wire and the man following us." "Why'd you get so upset?" Alfred asked, using his right thumb to push up his heavy glasses on the bridge of his nose. This part right here is the bridge. DJ sat down beside his friend and told him about the ham and eggs incident with Mr. Crater. Alfred listened in silence until DJ finished telling about Ormley Krager's sickening grin and Kathy Stagg seeing the whole thing. "Forget it," Alfred said with a shrug. "It's not worth a second thought." "That's what I try to tell myself," DJ said glumly, putting his elbows on his knees and resting his chin on his upturned palm. "Only I can't. I just can't. I should have done something, but I didn't. I let that man push me around without doing or saying anything. That Ormley kid sat there grinning, enjoying it. And then to have Kathy see it all?" "What else could have you done?" Alfred asked, picking up some dry pine needles from the ground and scratching in the dust with them. I don't know, but I should have done something." "You're really upset about it, aren't you, DJ?" "Yeah." DJ stood and slapped his open right palm on the stair railing. "I never wanted to get even with anybody in my whole life before, but now I do." Alfred frowned. "You're not the spiteful type, DJ. Besides, it's not your place to get even. Remember Mrs. Stagg's Sunday school lesson about 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord? Romans 12:19. "I know," DJ said miserably, "but I just can't get it out of my mind." Mrs. Milford opened the front screen door and called down the porch railing. "Alfred, that stray dog is back." "Okay, Mom," Alfred called. "I'll go chase him away again." He explained to DJ as they walked around the house, past the woodpile, and up the slight hill to the backyard. "A skinny hound came dragging in here this morning. His pads are all cut from running over rough ground, or maybe traveling a long way. His hide is all full of wounds, which are injuries. So he's probably a good trail hound, maybe tangled with a bear or a mountain lion. I wanted to feed him since he has no collar, but Mom made me try to drive him off. Says Duger's all the hound we need." Tag's out walking Duger now. The stray was sitting by the liquid gas tank in the backyard. That would be for their fuel. DJ saw at once that the hound was a black and tan. That's a type of hound dog. He was short-haired, mostly black, with brown highlights over his eyes and along his wide muzzle. His badly scarred ears were very long and floppy. When he stood and stretched, he shook his head hard, and his long, floppy ears flapped like great wings. At the sight of the boys, the hound's slightly curved tail began to wag slowly from side to side. "Friendly thing," DJ mused. He slowly extended the back of his right hand towards the hound's nose. You always do the backhand towards a strange dog, never like this part, because they might think you're going to hit them. The dog smelled the boy's hand and then licked it. "Too friendly," Alfred agreed. "When I tried to order him away a while ago, he kept looking back over his shoulder at me with those big brown eyes. I felt really sorry for him, but I made him go out of sight into the woods. I thought he'd gone, but now he's come back. Looks as if he hasn't had a decent meal in a month of Sundays." DJ ran his fingers gently over the dog's neck, shoulders, and ribs. The hound winced, like, it hurt him, when some of the fresher wounds were touched. But he didn't try to snap. Been in some nasty fights, too. And look at his feet. Those pads are all cut up. "Been traveling a long time, I guess," Alfred said, emptying Duger's water pan and refilling it from the hose. "Here, Pooch. Just because Mom says I can't feed you doesn't mean I can't give you a drink of fresh water." The stray bent quickly and lapped noisily at the water. His long pink tongue flickered up and back a couple times into the water. Wow, it's really raining outside. His floppy ears spilled into the water dish. He raised his big head, jowls, that's this part here, is a jowl, dripping, and cocked his head to look at Alfred. 2, maybe 3 years old, DJ guessed. No collar. Sort of like Duger when I found him for you. Think maybe someone dumped this one out to shift for himself? Could be. Lots of people do that. Both boys were thoughtful a moment, knowing that sometimes people around Stony Ridge shot strays because they didn't like loose dogs. Strays ran deer and other game away. Most strays got killed by cars or died because they had been pets and couldn't make it on their own. Alfred exclaimed, "Say, maybe this is one is trying to get home. Could be, judging from the distance he's traveled to cut his feet like that. Looks as if he'd be a really good hound dog if he had a little meat on his bones." "Looks downright starved," DJ agreed. "Well, I can't take him home because my stepmother is allergic to dogs, and I'm lucky she's let me keep Hero. But if this one doesn't get something to eat soon, I'm afraid he'll die. Boy, I hate to see you run him off." Me too. Let me try, Mom, once more. Mrs. Milford listened to her son's pleas and finally agreed. Okay, but just this once. Give him some of Duger's food, but don't chain him up. Maybe he'll be gone in the morning. DJ had a hard time keeping a smile on his face. They fed the hound, put a light chain around his neck, and took him for a short walk. The dog frisked about happily, sniffing noisily at various scents, because hound dogs have good noses. But he didn't bark or bay. They walked the hound back to Alfred's house, and DJ walked home. After midnight, DJ heard his dad come to the room. You asleep, DJ? He asked softly. The boy woke easily. No, he said, sitting up in his pajamas. He'd never owned a pair until Dad married last Easter, and Mom had insisted he wear proper sleepwear. What's wrong? Nothing. I just wondered if you heard it. Heard what? DJ automatically cocked his head to listen. Through the open screen bedroom window, he heard an owl screech. A light breeze rustled the incense cedar tree that grew just a few feet away. Then he heard something else, a sound that gave him goosebumps. What is it? He breathed, suddenly caught up in the magical spell of a sound he'd never heard before, but instantly loved. It was a hound baying on trail. That was obvious, but what a hound! The chopping bark was clear, deep, and joyous. It had the bass qualities of Brother Paul Stagg's human voice, except in the hound's was a wordless combination of power, joy, and beauty. The boy was reminded of silver bells tinkling over the snow at Christmas, yet this was a richer sound. It was more like a deep, booming gong or a bronze bell ringing out from some distant steeple. DJ felt the goose flesh run across his shoulders and then down his arms. His blood surged with excitement he'd never known. What is it? He asked again. Baalbelf, Dad replied. He said the word gently as if afraid speaking would break the spell. A hound with a real bugle voice. Must be the ghost dog Paul Stagg told me about. He's running alone, the boy whispered. Not in a pack, a loner. Very unusual, all right. But what a voice! Dad's tone was filled with awe. He sat on the edge of his son's bed. I never heard such a sound in my whole life. I wonder if Alfred's listening, DJ asked quietly. That's the kind of hound he's been wanting. DJ and his father listened until the hound's pure, clear voice was lost in the distance. For a long time, neither boy nor man said anything, enjoying the memory of that hound's great voice. Finally, DJ said, Dad, I wonder if Hero could trail that hound, the ghost dog. No hound I know of trails another, Dad said thoughtfully. But you can tell he was running over Skillet Peak. Wouldn't do any harm for you and Alfred to take a mosey over that way tomorrow. DJ's new stepmother had insisted the new family have a telephone. DJ had learned to use it, though he never did like it. Shortly after 8 o'clock the next morning, he called the little store by Alfred's house. Mrs. Greenlee, the owner, had a telephone. She grumbled a little, but finally agreed she would go up the hill and call Alfred to the phone. DJ held the line until he heard his friend's voice. Alfred? Did you hear that hound last night? Did I? I was hoping you were awake. DJ, that's exactly the kind of voice I want in a hound. I've got to have that dog. It may belong to somebody else. Besides, how would you ever find it? I've got to try. We could use our dog Duger, if Tag will let me. And maybe that Stray. He's still outside. At least we could check the area where the hound was running last night. Will you help me? DJ hesitated. Well, Dad says no hound he knows about will trail another, but we could take the dogs and go check on Skillet Peak. That's where he seemed to be running. And that's not far from where we got run off from the barbed wire. Yeah, and we could go to the lake that way too, check on the fish, and help you get your story. Okay, Alfred, I'll be there as soon as I ask to Mom or Dad. Whoops, hang on a minute, my dad's trying to say something. DJ listened and then spoke into the phone again. Oh, Alfred, this is Sunday. We've got to go to church. Can we talk there? DJ rushed around that morning without taking time for private prayer, Bible reading, or studying his Sunday school lesson. He didn't have a Bible of his own. He usually carried the one his mother had read before she died. But today, he didn't even think to take it. He squeezed into the old dusty pickup, which Dad drove out of the yard and down the hill. Two Moms sat next to him, her 9-year-old daughter, Priscilla, between DJ and Two Mom. She gently urged her husband to trade the pickup for a family sedan. DJ barely listened. His new stepsister, Pris, was unusually quiet. So the boy had time to think about the way Mr. Crater had treated him in the cafe. It was really bothering DJ even more than his interest in the ghost hound. The minute the pickup was parked at the church, DJ jumped down from the curb and hurried towards his friend. Alfred had been waiting under the evergreens by the front door of the small wood-frame church. It was an old structure with a rusted sheet metal roof and thousands of woodpecker holes in the open bell tower. Alfred ran up and took DJ by the arm, pulling him away from the other people. Guess what? Alfred asked, panting a little and pushing up his thick glasses with his right thumb. Dad says that stray hound can stay. But I don't want him now. I want that bugle voice we heard last night. You'd better take the stray, DJ suggested, looking around at other people arriving. He wouldn't have admitted it, but he was hoping for a glance at Kathy Stagg. I'm going to have that bugler, his friend said firmly. I'm going to find him and have him one way or another. What are you going to do with that stray? Well, if he's still hanging around tonight, I guess he can live with us until I get that bugler. Are you going to dump him like maybe somebody else already did? Of course not. I'll find him a good home. But I'm going to have that hound with a beautiful voice, and that's that, Alfred said flatly. The boys were so excited that they hardly paid attention in Sunday school. But when everyone sat in church for the worship service, DJ's attention was caught by Paul Stagg's first words. Proverbs 18:16 says, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men." So today I want to talk to you about using the gift God gave you to reach important people. DJ was surprised. He thought he knew his Bible pretty well, but he didn't even remember reading that particular verse. He wished he had brought his mother's Bible, since he didn't really have one of his own. His new stepmother had seemed to read his thoughts, for she opened the pages to the place and held it where DJ could read it for himself. The words seemed to leap up at DJ. His mind instantly grasped the idea that this writing was a gift from God. But could it bring DJ before great men? The preacher continued, "Everyone has a special gift from God. They are given to us as stewards or keepers of those gifts. They are not just for our own use, but to be used for the good of others. That's God's plan. But sometimes other things get in the way, and we want those gifts for ourselves, for selfish reasons." DJ didn't want to hear any more. He didn't want to hear any more. His mind was whirling off, touching questions and spinning on. Is it wrong to write the environmental story to gain national attention? How can I prove my writing gift is from God and it can be used for helping others? DJ's thoughts had been bothering him a lot since the ham and eggs incident. He hadn't prayed or even thought about the Lord that morning, but DJ had thought about Mr. Krager and his nephew with the sick grin, and DJ felt a bitter taste on his tongue. Suddenly, DJ had an idea. If his writing ability was really a gift from God, and if it was supposed to bring him before great men, there was a way to prove it. The governor of California probably got thousands of letters every week. The chances of his reading one from a little boy in a little mountain town were just about zero. But if DJ could write a letter that would bring the governor to Stony Ridge to check on the mystery of the polluted lake, DJ began writing the letter in his mind. By the time the closing prayer had been said, DJ couldn't wait to grab a pencil and paper. Well, that's a good idea, and that could help. Because if they found out what was poisoning those fish, that would be better for the fish and the people that drank from that lake. So that's the end of chapter 4. So Alfred has a chance to get the stray dog, but he wants the bugle mouth. Well, we will have to see what happens there. Tomorrow's chapter will be Secret Behind Bobbed Wire. You remember when I told you what bobbed wire was? It is fencing long with lots of points of wire that will poke into an animal or a person if they bump up against it. So you don't want to bump up against it. So we'll find out more of what's happening tomorrow. So I just want to remind you, I love you. I really do. But more importantly, God loves you and He always will. So I hope you enjoyed this story. I'll be back again tomorrow reading. And I just want to say good night to you and God bless. This is Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Bye-bye.